Good day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our exclusive webinar, Soft Experts exclusive webinar on APQP and how our technology can improve quality and compliance of your processes and products. We are lucky today to have two presenters, Ed Podizak, who's an implementation manager here at Soft Expert, and also Aaron Rosenstock, who is the quality manager, corporate quality manager with WeatherTech. Just a few housekeeping rules to begin. Question and answer session will be available after the presentation has been completed. So save up your questions, make sure you put them in the chat. So once Ed and Aaron's presentation has been completed, we'll go into that question and answer session. So thank you and enjoy today's exclusive webinar on APQP. And Ed, I'm going to turn the controls over to you.
Thanks, Angela. Good day, everyone. Happy to be here with you. Excited to share what we believe is an excellent way to go about managing APQP processes and ultimately PPAP. I began my career in the auto industry with an OEM, and in over 20 years in the industry, was involved in a lot of this work, either as an engineer, an operations person, and a project manager, program manager. So this is near and dear to my heart, getting this right. It's very, very important. So glad you all are able to join, and hopefully we'll share some good insights with you today. And with that, I'd like to also ask Aaron if he has a few comments to make. And please go ahead, Aaron.
Good morning. My name's Aaron Rosenstock. Yeah, I've been doing quality for over 20 years myself. Big fan of really being able to control the data, have a single source for which to have the data go through, and just the way that it can trickle through with everything. Especially, knowing the automotive world and how everything needs to be tied together, really big component of APQP, PPAP's control plans. I think that they're very helpful, and being able to make them effective and easy for other people to get by, and not just us quality people, is a really important thing and really good to have.
Excellent. Excellent. To our session administrator, I see some questions here about chat being enabled. I believe it's actually more a Q&A session that is enabled. So that would be the place to post comments.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Okay, well, let's get started. We'll move along here, and there will be hopefully a significant time toward the end to address the questions that you as a group of attendees have posted. So today I'm going to begin with a high-level overview of what we're going to cover. We know there's a lot of challenges. We've been talking with clients. We've been talking with other industry representatives, and I've even had the opportunity to speak with OEM leaders in supplier quality and purchasing. And one of the things at any level, I've worked in tier 1, 2, and 3 as well in my career, and everyone always wants to know, how can I keep everything organized well and have one version of the truth, that proverbial one version of the truth, important for the whole team to operate on. And it should be the accurate version of the truth, right? So we're going to cover what the structure is that we bring to this that allows keeping things organized well. How do you put a package together? Then we're going to see how we build the actual production route as a flow. And then we're going to actually take quite a bit of time going through how we author FMEAs and control plans inside the system. Then how do we track and manage revisions? And finally, can we assure that we have the complete package ready to go? Ultimately, as Angela mentioned, there's the Q&A session toward the end. So please put your questions in as the session unfolds here today. Thank you, Aaron, for joining, by the way. I appreciate it. And Aaron, As we've noted previously, feel free to add your important commentary, as I would otherwise call it, the color commentary, like from a sports broadcast.
Not a problem. You'll hear me pop in periodically and unexpectedly.
Okay, thank you. All right, just a quick introduction, who we are. And through the years, we're well over 25 years old, and we've been taking client input for a long time in several key industries, one certainly being automotive and transportation. So, you know, our motto is we're experts in global. We do provide for organizations that have multinational presence or multinational team members, even in one region, multiple languages that are available so the user can assign their own language and operate the menus and the forms that need to have data captured as what they're comfortable in their own language, something to be aware of that way. So as a result, we serve in many countries. We have over 2,000 organizations as clients worldwide, and we welcome all of you attendees from many different regions in the world today. We're going to keep focused primarily in North America, but we welcome LATAM, EMEA, Asia Pacific, Oceania, and all of you, we hope will find something useful today. Okay, the last is that we have a suite of over 40 modules, and we can focus in just a few, and we certainly provide packages of a few. And in this case, we're going to be focusing on, of course, APQP, all the forms. We'll talk about what that means, but primarily look at how we operate, author, and track to completion, the FMEAs and control plans. As a result, we help our clients comply with these industry standards and regulatory requirements that you experience around the world. A little bit about kind of a quick overview of our presence in the auto industry. And we're excited to be able to see that there's a lot of different organizations involved today, certainly that represent the auto industry at OEM and the various tiers. Welcome. All right. So what do we see? What are we hearing from you in industry, from our clients, you know, from industry events, from conversations that we have, from what we read? One of the biggest reasons that companies have come to us along the way, particularly in regards to APQP, is the challenge they have in keeping things orchestrated and organized well. So I'm not going to read every slide to you and every word. I'll spare you that, but wanted to share these insights. It's important, we believe, not just for compliance, but also for the value that you can derive from an FMEA, the value you can derive from thinking thoroughly through building your control plan. I hate to say it, but in my past, we had a few situations that I was involved in where someone would say, hey, where's that control plan? I don't know. Do we have one? Nope. So the team would hurry and build one in Excel, in a spreadsheet the day before, and we would backdate it. And I was almost embarrassed about that, but that wasn't my primary responsibility, but I supported the effort. And at least then we had something documented, but we didn't really have it embedded. All the FMEA work and all of the advanced thinking wasn't embedded in the process. We just kind of winged it. And I won't mention organizations or places, but a few clients figured that out. And you know, a registrar auditor also figured that out. So it wasn't very successful. So how can you be successful?
And just to add on to that, I will add that that's one of the big reasons that we launched the program in general for us, is just to have a single repository for everything, and really where we're able to put one place to find everything instead of digging through file folders, or either electronic or physical.
Yeah, I remember those conversations when we first started work together. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does that mean? How did we build our system in order to support all this good work? We wanted to assure that everything was built on two data sources in a common database. The production flow or process definition, I think of it as a routing with ops. 10, 20, 30, 40, etc. And then product information. Both of these areas have important parameters and characteristics that end up needing to be utilized in everything from the DFMEA, establishing a very robust flow chart, and then building the PFMEA and control plan based on what's there in the flow chart.
And just to add a little bit here, this is my opinion of just somebody who uses it, but I almost would put the flow chart before that little column. Because one of the really cool things about the flow chart is for every activity, you have the ability to enter characteristics, controls, all the APQP type of information, as well as characteristics for that part itself. It really makes building everything in that column quite a bit easier. I've really been dipping my toe into that a lot. It's really nice when you go to create a control plan and you don't really have to do much because it's already in that flow chart. Plus, when you have auditors stop in, to show them the flow chart and click on each individual step and say, well, here are the inputs and outputs, the controls, the characteristics for this. It's pretty impressive.
Well, thanks, Aaron. I know you put a lot of focus on that. I see someone's been raising a hand. If I could encourage you, I would ask you to, if you need help with something, put something in the question and answer section. And if it's an administrative issue or what have you, let us know. I don't know that we've opened the chat broadly, but the Q&A is one way to communicate with us even during the session. And then our administrator can take care of that. Again, thank you all for joining us. Okay, so that's the basis. We feel it's critical. Every cell in every form in every place is accessible for use by other forms. And so as we build the whole package, the whole thinking process, and capture it in an APQP package, as a result, we have things interrelating, and all of it is analyzable separately. So we'll take a look at what that means and how it's utilized. So these two data sources become the foundation, the building block. We want to be sure that we're recognizing revisions, because that's one way to get quickly out of date. The customer provides a change order for your product definition. You've decided that to improve quality, to improve productivity, you're changing the process. You're releasing a product to be used in a different process, different line. Hey, we produce it on line 1, but we can produce it on line 4 as well, but it's going to require this, that, and the other considerations and changes. So that really leads you to 2 separate control plans, maybe 2 separate PFMEAs. So how do we keep all of that organized? And it's because of this database and the tight integration and sharing that it becomes possible. And then ultimately, how do we get to the same place at the same time so that your APQP leader can submit the PPAP on time? I hate to say it, but I do remember working till 2 in the morning, gathering all the documents, texting people, reminding them that they owed me things that they had promised. And there was no way to really monitor the results except that I had my own checklist on my own spreadsheet, and that was uncomfortable. And we want to take you out of as leaders of APQP and customers waiting for them to be submitted, the forms and the PPAP to be submitted. We want to take you out of that clerical mode and help you be productive and use your time for thinking through the quality process. I kept scratching my head. Why are we doing all this administrative stuff when we should be putting our thoughts into quality engineering? Okay, what does that look like in our solution? So we typically link records one to the other, so you don't have to retype things. If it's entered once, it's used over and over. So in this particular case, you'll note the item or product data from our PDM module, part number, and this can be drawn out of your ERP. It doesn't have to be managed and operated on separately. But with this as a hub, the associations are the process, and you can have more than one process. This product could be made on 3 different process lines. There could be more than one FMEA. So there could be, if you're design responsible, the DFMEA, and you could have several PFMEAs. This is also, keep in mind, Rev A, and we'll be looking at, for example, Rev 3 here of the process applies to Rev A of the product. So this is where that synchronization begins to take place. Then we identify the APQP package or packages. If you hold things out to the market, you may have one package, for example, for one client. And if you're selling the same product identified to another client, I'm thinking, for example, of LED headlamps or tail lamps. The actual, what used to be called the bulb or the emitter could be common to several OEMs, for example, or to several system assemblers. Well, you can have multiple APQPs and different documents and views of all of that available based on all this common data source concept that we're talking about. But the ultimate deliverable is separate packages for separate clients if you need to. Pointing out here that the APQP, again, it has a revision A to go with product Rev A, still linked to single process at revision 3. This is where I believe a lot of organizations have told us they've received at best a minor and occasionally one or two majors. And when you think of it, you don't want to be building according to one thought process, building a product that's actually specified differently. So for everyone's benefit, your own included, and I would just add this last comment, the worst kind of situation to be in is get a finding and then get all that crisis management and CAPA and corrective action and preventative action work. If you do it right the first time and keep it in sync, I have found that I slept better at night. Okay. Selecting APQP forms. How do we build the package? The native forms are embedded in our APQP system. So we'll see how we call that out and we build a package. You can create different templates, if you will, for different clients, especially if we also need to have customer unique forms such as submission warrants, special analysis kind of forms. You can take their spreadsheet and bake it into your APQP package along with the native forms that you can use, like FMEA, control plan, capacity study, etc. However, even if you wish, and you have something that is your preferred pet kind of a document that serves your organization, maybe you're a software developer, maybe you're electronic, maybe you're providing fluids or something of that nature for the vehicle, refrigerants or something, then you can also build your own forms that are perhaps more applicable to your product and your market space. So that's something that SoftExpert permits through configuring forms that have access to the data because our system shares data. Okay, what we're going to look at here is how we put the package together. Aaron, you've done this a few times now, haven't you?
Once or twice.
Yeah, just getting started on building the whole complete package.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice having the pre-populated forms in, and like I said, having everything transfer. Just been learning the ins and outs of it, and once again, for anybody who's getting ready to do this, just make sure that your process flow is really locked in first and foremost, and everything is updated and ready to go there. And then that's going to make things a lot easier and help to reduce a lot of questions. Also, make sure that if you're tying it into a product, that's also set up well. So have everything done upstream, I guess is the short way of saying it.
Thank you. By the way, I wanted to point out there's something here that's called MQC. We've come to find, and I'm not sure which, I believe it is what we would normally consider, it's global company. I think it's Toyota, but it's a form that's often used with their supply base. Manufacturing quality control form. It's a specialized, essentially, control plan per operation. So you have one per op, and it has a little more visual content and lends itself more to understanding what needs to be inspected. So when the inspection checklist needs to be applied, whether it's in your ERP or we provide that through our inspection tool, However it is, you get to see more because the details in the control plan step by step are available. That was something that we added at request of a particular client. So we can modify our product pretty quickly. So this is building as an example package. Then what you need to do is update the dates, the start and end dates, which then leads to a duration, and then also assign the user who is responsible. That sends when the dates come to pass, such as in this example, then when the date comes for the flow chart, oh, the 25th of March through the 4th of April. Okay, it's not quite due finally yet, but when this date comes about, the user assigned, that's off screen here, a little under the Gantt chart, is sent a notification, and that person also receives an assignment in their, what we call My Tasks to-do list. So all of that is presented to the assigned user when they should be focused. And then they're given a reminder, if need be, when it's past due. But these indicators here, on time, coming due, past due on the design FMEA. So we keep people informed as well to drive according to that third principle of managing to a schedule, keeping everyone informed and up to date. So what does it look like to build the process view? It's a visual flow chart, but it does have, as Aaron's mentioned, the other parameters behind the scenes, characteristics or specifications, time, temperature, pressure, speed, plus you can also pre-populate control parameters for operations and control. And as a result, the routing is the basis, then it's the skeleton for the PFMEA control plan for sure. Okay, so we've declared that there is a process involved. How do we build it? Well, this is partially built already, but this will give you an idea of the nature of the drag and drop nature. And some of you are using probably a famous package that starts with a V, or others for doing visual graphic representations. But we think a picture is worth 1,000 words. These can be posted even for operators on their homepage. You know, when they log in, here's how you make the product, or a team leader could see this. But here's how we're modifying it. And normally, it would, instead of saying op 10, it would be receive, it would be stamp, mold, press, cut, weld, whatever, finish, whatever these are. However, there are parameters underneath here, the characteristics. So in this case, we're going to show you an attribute characteristic for those of you with a quality background, a visual versus a measurable variable characteristic on a process. So let's presume this is a machining center, a CNC. And this is a visual. Is the PLC program correct? Therefore, the speed will be identified. You can set those control parameters if you wish in advance. That's where it will trickle down, as Aaron's mentioned, into the control plan. Here, these are measurable characteristics with nominal values, units, tolerances, all of that. But there's also this idea of the APQP columns that will be, the data will be pre-populated into the control plan. And as a result, each operation can end up with something that looks like this. You can be checking, for example, die height or some other measurable parameter in the setup, or you can do things like confirm you've got the correct components or raw materials. Do I have the right output container? Are the labels present to correctly label the product? Whatever it is that you need, you can have visuals, you can have measurables specified behind the scenes, So essentially your process flow is more than a pretty visual face. It has all of this substance behind it.
And that's really the big key, kind of what I was talking about earlier between this and the APQP. From the first page, this is going to be very helpful in the FEMAs, the control plans, all those other elements, because this will roll right in, so you don't have to remember it all going forward.
And you don't have to retype it on. I remember that on those spreadsheet things, retyping all this over and over again, or you'd clone it and then you'd have to try to remember what you needed to fix or change. It was always a challenge. Thanks, Aaron. So again, this is the part of the, I won't call it secret sauce, but the way to do it is how we do it, best practice. Keeping in mind that we've hard coded these native forms. So you provide the parameters, we do the logic and report it as you need it. We keep things in tables so that the answers are standardized. One of the things that was a challenge is if someone were to say, for example, someone would put in as a result of an operation in the control plan, a product should be free from burrs. Others might indicate no burrs. Others might indicate no defects, no visual defects. So how do you standardize that? You build it in advance, you can add on the fly, but they're normalized, what we would call normalized values. Keep everyone, so when you come to analyze, and we'll see what that looks like, that you can actually analyze across different records in the system. Very powerful when you want to have a common language internally for figuring out how are we going to deal with issues, but how are we going to do risk mitigation and preventative action. We're using the same language, so to speak, terminology. So let's move on here to building and editing the first harmonized AIAG VDA process FMEA. DFEMA has similar interaction, the user interface is very similar. So these are following the steps from the harmonized process. It's following the structure of your process flow. You just turn it on or you exclude it as needed, whatever's relevant. If it's a non-value add operation, like a material move, you might exclude it. These are all drop downs, but you can even add an additional one as needed. So while you're doing the work as the quality engineer, the manufacturing engineer, the product engineer, you can add what's needed and keep going. But you have a whole list of standardized answers. In this case, we're just indicating that you can edit. You can also add. So if it comes to adding more effects, you can do that. Here, we're noting the importance of your mental process, considering what's going on in your plant, the effect on your direct customer, and what severity there is affecting an end user. So that's all part of the standardized process that we model. And in a little bit, you'll see what the actual FMEA looks like. The action priorities follow the calculation guidelines, which then could require an action to be deployed, so to speak, with a responsible person. Next, we're going to go to the classic, what I call classic, but the AIAG edition 4 FMEA. Excuse me. So it's gathering the data from the whole database. So it takes a moment, but then you get a nice result. Did I pause this by accident? So note here, and this is, I do want to pause for a moment. This is where all of the different revision levels come into play. So as we're calling out the FMEA, we're referencing the process at its revision level, the item, if it's relevant, at its revision level, who the customer is. So you can have different FMEAs technically for different customers, as well as this FMEA version. So everything stays in sync this way. Aaron, I know you have kind of an interesting observation from some entertainment venue on classic TV. So maybe in a moment here, you can add a comment or two about FMEA development. Notice the same idea of the standardized drop downs. You have control of what's in those tables, always to be able to modify. We also have this way to analyze by different rankings here or sorts. So the RPN is the sort, the highest RPN is 120, so that's op 20. Down, you could also do S by O, severity and occurrence, if you want to begin looking more from that VDA standpoint from action priority.
Yeah, I mean, just to add something, I think for a lot of us, you know, if we're the quality guru, we're the ones that know this in and out a lot more than the people who we're going to be working with to make these documents. So one of the things that I found advantageous, especially with the newer harmonized ones, especially when it comes to the DFEMA, is that the way that it breaks it down into, okay, what are the functions, and as you build it step by step, how it makes it a lot more clear to everyone, especially those that don't get it. You know, the guide does a very good job of talking. I believe they use a window motor or something like that, where you have the motor and then you have, or the whole base, and then you have the motor and then you have the gearbox. That they give a good example of that in the book, and this does a good job of actually breaking it down like that, as you saw. And it allows you to go step by step by step and propagate through. So you're not necessarily throwing a whole spreadsheet in front of someone and having to scrunch through and everything else like that. Plus, standardization is a big thing as well. You know, you can use the exact same verbiage across all of your FEMAs, same rankings and everything like that.
That common terminology, that common set of metrics. Thanks. Now we're going to see about the control plan. How do we author the control plan? Thanks again, Aaron. This is a whole package, a whole APQP package, albeit a short list of forms to be completed. So we're choosing control plan in our to-do list. I'm the assignee here. So the summary information at the top of the control plan form. Then the idea of product or item characteristics will be something that we work with next. And you can choose which characteristic is included, which one is not. And as Aaron mentioned, whether it's in the process or it's in the product, the more that you fill in from the process or product data source, the more things will be populated here. You don't have to type them one off here in each APQP control plan. Again, you can select which characteristics are relevant to the control plan. If something's a reference only, you may not even want to track it in the control plan. You can turn that off. And again, the more that you pre-enter, the more that your data is already populated. Still editable, but it's already populated.
And it's generally pretty easy with things like processes and control plans to create copies and just update them. So that way, you know, if you have a stamping process, you know, like this, where you might use the same stamping process, but make a, 5/32 screw and a 4 mm screw. I think those are roughly equivalent, where they're so super close, but one's millimeter, one's metric, one's standard, that, you can just copy it. You can update the values without having to recreate everything over and over and over again, which I don't know. I don't like busy work doing that. So the more that I can copy, paste, and modify, the happier I am.
And that cloning or copying is usually about a 3-button push to get where you need to go and get it done. But then the copy is also in sync with the revision levels and such. Very good. Thanks, Aaron. Okay, this is the result. I shared an example of how you produce the control plan form. That's the result of all the data entry and the source data, as well as the control plan authoring. We'll see a little bit more example of this as we go forward again. Okay. How do we manage the revising? How do we keep track of all of what's going on in the source data and in the product here and in the forms themselves? So the idea, again, is that we want to remind the informed, knowledgeable person, the quality engineer, the process engineer, the program manager, whoever it is that's managing the APQP package, that something's changed in the source data. What do you want to do about it? And we'll see how that operates here. You can do nothing. You can create an entirely new package, or you can revise the existing one if there's an impact on form, fit, function, or risk. Because we have the database, we can monitor all sorts of important information. How many different of the various forms are outstanding? What are we working on? We can see details that are linked to all that below. This is one example of a view that's pretty popular. Because we have a database situation, we can analyze data out of any of the records, even down to the cell level in the form. So as a result, we can see here something to do with the risk profile, if you will, for product FMEAs. When I say product, meaning FMEAs for different customers across all of those FMEAs for that one customer. So we're looking at the different rankings of severity, occurrence, and detection. We can see that there seems to be a challenge with this customer overall, whether that's a high risk product because it's complex, the process is challenging, the tolerances are tight, the volumes are very high, volumes are very low, whatever it is that we've evaluated. But if we were to look beyond that, then we might put a task force together to get that risk mitigation really rolling. The next one that has the highest severity, this one for General Motors has the highest severity. What do we need to do to look at that? Or is the occurrence very low and the detection very high, in which case we may not choose to focus as heavily on that. So it's up to you, but this type of pulling the data, accessing the data, and putting into meaningful metrics is what is very important that comes from having a common database. And then the idea that we establish rev levels of the APQP package, including all of the forms contained within. Here we see one that's released, one that's in the draft state. The indication here, and if I was hovering over a live screen, that would indicate revision mode. So all of that, and that's we're drafting right now, which corresponds to that. So there's a lot of visual cues for management, quality managers, ops managers, program managers, sales execs, whoever it is, to see what's going on and stay informed, because all of this is available. You can view the same data, but from different perspectives, different angles, so to speak. So here's what it looks like to follow, in this case, a product revision, an item, as we call it, but you can rename it if you want to call it part or product or whatever. It has been revised. We have a released version 3. There is a notification sent to the APQP lead that says, hey, you need to revalidate this. And you have choices. So these choices indicate different paths, if you will, in a visual kind of mental kind of flow. Do nothing, create a brand new one from scratch, one from existing APQP package, or just revise the current one you have. It's the choice of that APQP lead. Once it's on its way, we're going to take a look at what an APQP revision, the information behind the scenes, under the covers, the tracking, if you will, the trace history, what that looks like. So again, we see the whole package, whatever it happens to be. However, when it comes time to look at the revision, we can go look at what happened to bring us to this Rev 1 from Rev 0. John Connor started it. Oh, here's the flow. In this case, for example, we had the same person, but there's a draft and an approve. You can have many approvers. You can have review step in there. It's your choice, but you end up with a package to be released, so to speak. You would accept the revision, and then that becomes the last version that's released that everyone's operating on, keeps everyone on the same page. Then we go about executing the tasks within the various forms to follow. How are we sure we have the whole package? And then we're rounding, we're getting right near the final bend here to get to the finish line. We have a lot of capability here. The leaders can track things. The people are responsible to do the work are notified and reminded. We even have the ability to open a portal for suppliers. We'll take a look at that in the next slide to gather important things from perhaps critical suppliers providing critical components or modules. And what does that look like for them to be able to do that? We have an ability then for the leader, when all the forms are finished, ready to submit the whole package, you just push a button and you get the whole PDF bundle for the PPAP to send on to your client. We can track the status, which is important. Keep everyone informed. It's been submitted. It's been rejected. It's been resubmitted. It's finally approved. What have you? Because in theory, you're not supposed to launch without at least a conditional approval of your PPAP package. And then finally, all the possibilities of reporting the BI. We have, again, folks at all different levels of the organization able to use the intuitive package. So this is, I built this quickly here recently. Took me about 10 minutes, maybe less. It took me more than 5 minutes because I wanted to add these if-then conditions. So we see over to the right, we're 100, the supplier is Acme. I'm Mr. Acme, Miss Acme here, and I'm supplying these documents. The first 5 listed there were all due and I submitted. However, they're in verification mode. They've not yet been approved. So I get that kind of quick communication. I'm reminded that my capability study is running behind because now I've slipped past April 1st. It's April 3rd. I'm past due. So it's going to turn red to signal me. And then the next one at the bottom has not yet come due. So there's no other indication. We can edit these very easily. You can do it. There's no secrets here. It's editable as suits your purpose. But now you've gathered those up so that you're sure that you have, for example, if you're considering your capacity plan, have your suppliers provided all of the information and evidence that they're ready to produce in sufficient quantities at your quality requirements to support your commitments to your customers under your capacity plan. So all of that is managed. Now, what I'm going to share with you is what this package does indeed look like. So here's for example, the harmonized PFMEA of the example of building one out. Then we go to the classic format, the edition 4. Again, it's very simplistic because it's our demonstration system. What the control plan looks like, you saw it briefly at the result, the output of the authoring of the control plan. And then ultimately, when the leader pushes the button, a whole bundle comes out in one PDF, the whole PPAP package. So I'm going to go down through the first few forms. This is a listing of all the forms and call them documents in the package. Then what's in the APQP manual, the various checklists, the control plan itself. Now I'm going to jump forward to the end to point something out here in a moment. There's going to be the DFMEA will come along here in a moment. It's very, very short. It's only 1 or 2 lines. And I don't want to give you too many screens, but I'll jump down to the bottom and back up a little bit. When we get down here, we have the ability to capture in one of the forms in the package to do the data gathering in support of the capability study. It's actually here. So that we do the statistics and report PPK, CPK, etc. to confirm that your PPAP samples meet, or if you're doing a safe launch kind of a protocol, whatever it is, we can do that capability study through the module. So these other forms are live and dynamic based on product characteristics. And then we get to the things such as an MSA study. So in this case, a linearity report was designated. And then ultimately, like a gauge R&R, which I'm very familiar with from the past, was a study that we always did to finish our PPAP prep. So all of this is available in the package. With that, we're going to get to our Q&A. Aaron, did you have anything to add up to this point?
No, I think that's a little bit, we don't do a ton of PPAP submissions, so I don't play with that part as much, but when the time comes, I will be utilizing that greatly and look forward to it.
Right, you're in direct to consumer and some aftermarket, so it's not as heavy in the PPAP realm, but you're using it for the right reason, in my opinion. You're actually using it to think through the design FEMA, the flow chart, the PFEMA, and control plan to guide your quality planning.
Yeah,
So with that, yes, go ahead,
I was
please.
gonna say, we tend to treat it like that regardless, so.
Yes, that's important. Compliance is very important, but to me, it's almost secondary, because if you're doing the right things, you will be compliant. So thank you.
Okay. So
All right,
everyone,
Angela, so here we
yeah.
come to the Q&A.
Exactly. It's now time for Q&A. Make sure you put your questions in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom webinar opening. There was one question that came in and Aaron actually answered it, but I'll put that question out to everyone. There was a question regarding the severity level. Could it be modified based upon that specific company's internal requirements? And Aaron did state that he created custom descriptions and severities based upon their needs. And this is unique to DFMEAs and PFEMAs.
Yes, all of those rankings you designate. Is it a DFEMA, PFEMA, or a whole system FMEA if you need to?
Sure. I actually have another question that came in from Jason. How does this fit in between a PLM system, ERP system, and MES? Does it replace an MES system?
There is some ability with in-process inspection and things of that nature. We can and we do interface to ERPs. So it is in some clients, they choose to use, for example, built forms and checklists, and then capture those and store those in the system, like start of shift. the actual inspections, the SPC, the inspection capability in our system. So to that extent, it can provide, we provide work instructions, which some MESs do. Regarding ERP, we would typically often rely on asset descriptions like process equipment, tooling, but we have all of that capability ourselves if someone doesn't in an ERP or doesn't like what they have in the ERP. And product definition, we can exchange data with the ERP there. So when it comes to referencing that in our PDM, we can have the latest from the ERP represented. So that's a very good question. Something to be explored on a case-by-case basis, because some clients are concerned about certain attribute metadata information, some aren't. So there's a little bit of discovery, but that's all possible. I'll stop there. Is there, Aaron, I don't know if you want to add anything at this point about your plans.
Nothing big as pertaining to that yet.
I believe that you all did interface to your current PLM/PDM tool that you've been using as far as gathering
Yes,
product information.
at a very high level. We're just getting a basic table dumped into it, but it is being used to trigger a process flow that we built up. So there is that, but it's not something that we've gone really heavy into.
Okay.
I might have some designs for it, but that's a very large build to build then cross, bridge to build then cross.
Hey, were there any other questions? We do have some time to answer more questions. So please put them in the chat or in the Q&A.
I do want to add something that from my history, 20 years in the supply chain, well, 5 in OEM and 15 years in the supply chains. We had a lot of disparate thinking processes. We had, not in every case, there were some wonderful experiences, but the idea of parallel or concurrent engineering, some of the terminology used, I believe that a healthy APQP approach is a tool to guide and reinforce that sort of a concept. We're doing this in the design. How does it affect manufacturability? How does it lead to high risk or lack thereof in terms of production? A lot of that was relied upon in terms of one person's thinking process or occasional team meetings, and was there a punch list for feasibility or not? But it was all somewhat loose, where having this type of an approach guides the product engineering and the process engineering and the quality teams to work together. And whether you're sitting in the one room or you're building out the data sources and then authoring these documents, you're being guided along that healthy process. So that's where I think the AI AG manual and the whole product development process from conceptualization through to launch and post-launch, one of the biggest challenges I ever saw was that the capacity plan didn't fit the product design or the manufacturing capability. So when it's all in one package, like I wish we would have had access to something like SoftX where we just didn't know about it. It would have really helped our organization produce on-time launches, launch well, and satisfy our customer requirements and industry guidelines. So I think that that's where a comprehensive tool can be very beneficial. Anything else at this time, Angela? Otherwise,
no other questions have come in as of yet. There was one question that came in regarding the receiving a copy of the recorded session. We will be forwarding a copy of the recorded session, a link to access it within the next several days. The link will be available for 30 days or so, so you can review that online webinar once again. And then if there are any questions or you require more information or even to schedule a follow-up discussion, please send all of that related information over to sales@solfexpert.com.
There'll be additional information in the communication with the link to the webinar as well to reinforce how you can contact us.
That's correct.
So all of that information will be sent to the email that you registered with. And with that, I wanted to say thank you to all of you who attended and those who provided questions. Thank you very much. And Angela, thank you. And Aaron, of course, thank you for
Aaron.
your insights and commentary today. Always good to hear from somebody putting this to use on a practical daily basis. And with that, I will say thank you, and we can close the webinar to our administrative team. Thank you all.
You have a good day, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you.